Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we're going to do a little bit of a box office video. I just finished my box office breakdown for the Geeks and Gamers channel, so if you want a full box office breakdown for all the movies that came out this weekend, go check out that over on the Geeks and Gamers channel. But I wanted to talk a little bit about two movies and the different narratives and the different stories about each one of them. The first of which is Charlie's Angels. As you saw in a previous video, Charlie's Angels was set to do very poorly this weekend, and now we actually have official estimates, and the film is set to make $8.6 million here domestically, with $19.3 million in the foreign market, and that is including a very, very weak opening in China. In fact, I would not be surprised if China says, yeah, we're not showing your movie anymore because it's not making any money. In fact, a local film there in China made more than what this one did in its opening weekend, and the big question would be asked is why? Why did this film fail? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, right? We can oftentimes go to the, go woke, go broke scenario, which I think is very true in this scenario, not just because of what we see in the trailer, where she says, a woman can do anything a man can do. And it's like, really, you have to keep up this narrative? I feel like we've moved past that. I feel like we don't have to. I feel like that was a big push in the 90s, and now all of a sudden it's coming back in full force because it's 2019. That's all we can really talk about nowadays is, oh my gosh, we have to talk about social identity. We have to talk about identity politics, and we can't stop. And it's becoming very infuriating, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the normal audiences are starting to pick up on that, especially when it's so heavy-handed like it is for this trailer and like it is for what seems to be this movie, and they're just saying, yeah, enough is enough. We just want good movies. We want films like Joker. We want films like Ford v. Ferrari. We want films that are just good, solid movies. We want films like Alita Battle Angel that, yeah, we can talk about how the box office wasn't that great, but could you imagine if the media had picked up the story about Alita Battle Angel and had pushed for that, how much money it could have made, where instead they were focusing so much on Captain Marvel and about how, oh, it's so historical, and oh my gosh, it's so great. And now that franchise is not likely to make a very successful sequel at this point in time because people are asking, hey, where are they announcing it? If it was that successful, don't you think they would have announced a sequel at this point? I mean, I think that these are all questions and these are all points that we need to bring up. But the main reasons why Charlie's Angels didn't do well is because it's not a good movie. If you look at most reviews of the film, anything that's positive has some type of political point to it. Even the Rotten Tomatoes general consensus says, oh my gosh, this film is great, albeit it has one of those reviews, if anyone's never seen it, let me go ahead and pull it up for you. I hate going to Rotten Tomatoes, but you know what? I think the point needs to be made as to why this film is doing so poorly. So Charlie's Angels has a 59% from critics and 82% from audience. If you look at the verified ratings, 552, that means no one's going to see it. Because the verified rating means those are people that have been confirmed to have a ticket, and that's why they're able to rate it. You want to know why no one is wanting to rate this movie? Because no one is going to see this movie. And no one's going to see this movie because there's no reason to go see it. I mean, look at that poster. Is that poster supposed to be appealing? Who is that supposed to be for? The big marketing ploy is, oh, it's supposed to be for women, and this is a story for women. Well, the women spoke very loudly on this and said, screw you, stop pandering to me. We are more than just this nonsense. We can be so much more than a Charlie's Angels movie at this point in time. So take that, Elizabeth Banks. But this is what I'm pointing to right here, is the critics' consensus. So even though the critics' score is rotten, when you dive further into it, the top critic score is at a 54%, a 5.5 out of 10 versus a 5.8 out of 10. These are not good scores. Look at the audience score, 82%. When you look at the all-audience score, it's 61%, meaning that this film is not doing very well. Oh, well, those are just a bunch of trolls troll bombing it. You can make that argument all you want, and that's an argument that's been tried to be made several times for several movies now, and there's really not been any proof of that because we could argue the same thing, that people are artificially scoring it higher to try and counteract that. So in all honesty, I think the 61% is probably a lot more accurate, 3.2 out of 5, which is actually not a terrible score when you look to it out of a 5-point scale. But the thing that I look to is this: earnest and energetic. If you want to see the political motivations behind Rotten Tomatoes, look at their critics' consensus, because anytime there's a film that they have to promote, that they have to say is awesome, even if it is a rotten score, you will see this kind of language. Earnest and energetic, if a bit uneven, Elizabeth Banks' pulpy Charlie's Angels adds new flair to the franchise with fun performances from its three leads. If I were to read that not seeing the scores, I would assume this is a 75% or higher score. But because Rotten Tomatoes is such a show website, and because they have to promote films like this, whether they're good or bad, even in their critics' consensus, if anyone's going to actually trust in Rotten Tomatoes now anymore, I don't know who would trust in them anymore. They would look at it and say, oh, it sounds like it's a fun, entertaining film. They would look to the score and say, oh, well, audiences are enjoying it, because they wouldn't want to actually click on this and then click on this to find out, oh, actually, the score is not nearly as high as I would think. Or they would go to CinemaScore and say, like, oh, CinemaScore, even though they don't provide any evidence as to who answers their survey, how many people answered their survey, what cities the surveys answered it, and they don't need to do any of that, because all they need to do is put that nice little score, a B+ score. Oh, it can't be that bad. When we all know it's all a rigged game. It's all a rigged system, because these shills have to. They have to do it that way. Why do you think you have that constantly happen with CinemaScore? Because in order for them to stay relevant, in order for industries to keep mentioning them by name, in order for people like John Campea to keep saying, well, the CinemaScore said this and the CinemaScore said that, they have to keep on promoting these films. They have to keep on giving them artificially higher scores because of wokeness. And it's really, really getting old at this point in time. But like, seriously, this is absolutely phenomenal. Look, go ahead and compare that to Joker. Joker's another film that got ultimately attacked. But look at the score. Audience score, 89%. All audience score, 91%. Verified, 63. So you're actually seeing a very similar number. The difference is that the score actually goes higher on Joker's end versus for for freaking I can't even find it on here because it's so bad. Charlie's Angels, which is having that opposite effect. But then you look to the critics. Top critics gave it a 6.7 out of 10. You realize that there is a higher Rotten Tomatoes score for the top critics for Charlie's Angels than for this. So a 6.7 out of 10. Let's see what the average score was for this. So a 6.7 out of 10 versus a 5.5 out of 10. And yet, here's the interesting part. So notice actually the top critic score is higher for Joker, but the tomato meter is higher for them. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because the tomato meter is one of the most disingenuous scores ever to be posted, because it's supposed to make you think, oh, that means that 54%, that's a grade. That's just the number of critics that gave it a positive rating. But also notice how that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because their average scores were lower. Oh my goodness, this is why I don't use Rotten Tomatoes. Patooey, I spit at you. Get off of my screen, Rotten Tomatoes. Patooey. That's why your system sucks. That's why you suck, and that's why no one should use Rotten Tomatoes anymore. I'm very sorry that I had to subject all of you to their terrible, shillful ways. But isn't that amazing that a film like that, a film like Joker, gets panned by the critics, gets pushed down, makes over $1 billion because it's a good film. This is the story of a very different film. This is a film that's a well-made movie that had a lot of controversy behind it, a lot of people pushing against it, fighting against it, and yet it was able to be successful despite them. And that's really what it is. Despite all of that, it became the only rated R film in history to cross the $1 billion mark. It became one of the few films to cross the $1 billion mark without getting a China release. That's a very hard feat to do, and it was able to do that, let alone a rated R film without a China release. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing, the feat that it's done. But look at how the media treat this film. Look at how they attacked, and it will go down in history by those scores, because too many idiots still take that site too seriously, Rotten Tomatoes, and all the critic scores. People still listen to them. And people are wondering why YouTubers are becoming more popular. The people are wondering why you have these new channels, these new and up-and-coming channels, these really grassroots channels growing up and becoming so successful. The reason why is because people are tired of it. People are tired of films like this, which are epic fails, making $8.6 million domestically. Only $19.3 million in the foreign market. A film that only cost $48 million to make and could be a box office bomb. It could be a box office bomb, having cost almost nothing to make, getting a pretty robust marketing campaign behind it. And you have idiots like Elizabeth Banks coming out in public saying, "Oh, well, if the film doesn't do well financially, well, then that speaks more to the toxic males than anything else." No, it speaks more to the fact that you make terrible movies. Let's keep in mind some other films that you've made. Oh, wait, that's right. You took Pitch Perfect, which was a great film, and then you made sequels, which were terrible, and now no one's going to remember that franchise in a positive light anymore. You had a great film in the first one, which was directed by someone else. You took over, and then you totally destroyed it. Now you take on Charlie's Angels, and you totally destroy that one as well. Even though, to be honest, the film franchise really wasn't all that impressive in the first place. But then you decide, oh, instead of having it be exploitative, and instead of having it be focused on the male gaze, I'm going to try and make a film where the women can dress however they want, whatever makes them feel comfortable. And look what happens. Oh, yeah, the market we tried to go for was the young teen crowd. We wanted to show women can be strong. You can do that without having to preach. It's been done. Alita Battle Angel, Ripley from Aliens. There are so many countless examples of strong females. Kill Bill. People tend to forget about that one a lot. And yet, those are all films that were pretty successful. Alita, we could argue, was not, but there was a huge campaign in the media against that film because they would rather have promoted Captain Marvel at the time. But isn't it amazing that they will promote these films that are obviously woke, that have obvious agendas to them, but when it comes to actually just really good films, they'll say, oh no, this isn't the typical film that we want to promote anymore. The problem that we really have is that there's this real attempt in modern day society, especially American society, to try and push certain narratives. And the narratives are, we want to show that women are supposed to do these specific things. Women do X, women do Y. Instead of it really being women can do whatever they want, it ends up being, no, we want women to specifically do these specific parts, these specific jobs, these specific career paths, and if you're not for this narrative, then you're a sexist. That is the main objective. That is the main talking point of going down today in Hollywood, is that we're pushing these narratives, and if it's not a part of the narrative, then, oh, no, it's toxic, and oh, no, we need to boycott it. I guarantee you there are going to be people out there that are going to say, Ford v. Ferrari is a toxic white male's dream. And I'm going to look at them and say, no, it was a biopic and didn't change anything because it couldn't, because it's a biopic, and it understood what it had to be. And it's appealing to mass audiences of various backgrounds and in various colors. I mean, go ahead and look to it. It's technically, it really is mostly an American and Italian story, and yet it's appealing to a lot of different companies. It's rather appealing to a lot of different markets. And it's just so frustrating. I'm sorry. My mind is just so out of it today because I just cannot believe that we see numbers like this and people continue to spin their webs, continue to spin their narratives. And we see movies like this where people continue also to say, that, oh yeah, well, it's still terrible. And look at that Rotten Tomatoes score, John Campea. Look at that score. Those critics, let me tell you, of which I'm one. Successful because it's a good film, doesn't preach politics. Terrible film, preaches politics, and is failing. I'll let you decide why it's happening. There are many reasons why this film is failing, why this film is succeeding. But to say that wokeness is not a part of the equation is to be ignorant. And to say that having this be a good movie is not a part of the equation for its success is also to be ignorant as well. And that's one thing I try to avoid on this channel. I don't want to fall into a sense of ignorance. I don't want anyone here to fall into a sense of ignorance. We have to be aware of the agendas that are existing in Hollywood right now. It is pervading our culture, it is pervading our films. That's the reason why I am so against films like Toy Story 4. There are many people out there that were able to say, oh, it's a good film. But when you look underneath it and you see the messaging there of, no, do whatever it is that you want to do. Doesn't matter if it hurts anyone else. Doesn't matter if it affects anyone. Do whatever it is you want to do. The self-centeredness that movie preaches, to kids especially, is a terrible message. It's the reason why I go after films like Ralph Breaks the Internet, because they're trying to indoctrinate your children. Vanellope, she's a strong, independent woman, and she can just go off and do her own thing for her own happiness. It doesn't matter if the game relies on her for the whole code to exist. Doesn't matter. She doesn't care about what happens to the game. She only cares about her own happiness, and that's what you should focus on too. You realize how terrible of a message that is to young kids, especially young girls in that situation? To be so self-centered that you don't care about how your choices impact other people. It's that type of self-centeredness that we need to push back against. And it's that type of self-centeredness that creates films like Charlie's Angels, 2019. It's all about how we feel. It's all about our feelings. It's all about me, I. And instead it should be more about, no, what can I do to better the world around me? While also still being happy. And happiness is not a bad thing. But we also understand that we don't act in isolation. And if I do an action, it is going to impact those around me. And if I remain ignorant of how it impacts those around me, that's the reason why the world that we have exists the way that it does. Because too many people in the world are so self-focused, they don't recognize that their actions can impact others. Anyway, enough of being on my soapbox for a second. What do you think about this box office? Do you think that Charlie's Angels failed because of its wokeness, because of its marketing, because of people like Elizabeth Banks being an idiot who doesn't know how to direct a film? Please let me know your thoughts on that. And also, why do you think Joker succeeded? Do you think it's because it's a good movie? Do you think it's because of the media backlash against it? Or do you think it's a mixture of these things? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this in the comment section below. Please let me know. And if you like this video, smash that like button. Give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.